Thank you. I've been harassing you you probably don't even know how long I've been harassing you for. It's been about 3 years, I think.
Has it been?
Has it been that long?
Yeah.
It
was,
really?
Originally, it was through Michael Malice.
Yeah, through Malice. Yeah, it was like, come on, help us get Dave. Help us get Dave.
Yeah, see, I was unaware of this. I did remember whenever I first saw, it's just like the craziness of like social media. Like I just happened to see the post and I was like, oh yeah, I remember you. The guy who interviewed Scott Horton. I was like, yeah, I'll do it.
Right. That's why I was like, right, I'm going public now. We're going to get Dave. Okay, let me give some context of the reason why you are the guy I really want to sit down with. So I'm British. We don't have a libertarian movement. It's very small if it exists.
Right.
It's probably like 5 guys. I'd never even heard of it till I got into Bitcoin, right? I get into Bitcoin. And then everyone's calling me a statist cuck, and they're like trying to introduce me to libertarian ideas. And the whole time, this whole 6 years, I've been like, I kind of agree with everything you're saying, but I don't structurally understand how this functionally works. And then I listened to your interview with Rogan when he was like, what do you do? Like, how do we change this? And I was like, okay, I've definitely got to talk to Dave. Got to get into this. And so context really is like the last few layers were during COVID where I got everything wrong. I believed everything I was told. I was like, yeah, this is like, we should lock down. Yeah, this is crazy. And then like you get through the end, you're like, oh, fuck, I've been mugged off.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people feel that way for sure.
Yeah, it's just been like such a journey. But then I've got to this place and I feel like everything's fucked, Dave.
Yeah, yes and no. There's some beautiful things out there, but there are some things that are fucked. To your point, like what you were saying, that having this kind of natural inclination toward like, well, look, if all the experts are telling me like that we got to lock down this, it's like, I don't know, this is ridiculous. So what, some podcaster thinks it's not right, but every single scientist who I see, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like telling me this. But the thing is that, and even to me, it's still kind of like shocking. And this is all I talk about all the time. There was this video that this guy, Liam at the Gray Zone made recently. I don't know if you saw this, but it's him. He made this video and like I was in it and Scott Horton was in it, but it's him confronting congressmen and I think a congresswoman in there too, who had voted for the funding in Israel for this latest round of funding for the war. And he confronts them all and asks them how they feel about the fact that Netanyahu's, stated goal was to support Hamas because that would mean the world wouldn't recognize a 2-state solution.
Yeah.
And to a man and woman, all of them just have no idea what he's talking about. And they're like, what? What report are you referring to? They keep asking, what report are you referring to? And he's like, well, it was it's a front page of Haaretz, it was front page of Times of Israel. There was a big New York Times article just written about it, all that. And they ask all that. And just none of them it's not like they have an opinion on it. They have no idea what he's talking about. And it's this weird thing where still, even to me on some level, you just expect that like, you can't tell me that a congressman has no idea of the stuff I'm talking about. They don't know what you're talking about. But actually, that's the answer. They have no idea. And because their job isn't to read about all this stuff. Their job is to meet with donors and lobbyists and figure out focus group which slogan will get more of the low IQ people to vote for them. You know what I mean? Like that's their job. And likewise, I remember having this moment this was in 2022, where I was arguing with my former son's pediatrician, who was trying to convince me to get my 6-month-old vaccinated against COVID. And I'm like, absolutely not. And we just start getting into this argument. And I realized halfway through, this guy doesn't know half of what I know about this vaccine. And I'm not like saying this to be like, I know all this shit. I'm a dumbass comedian. I just happen to, I do a show 3 times a week and I'm obsessively reading about all this stuff. And he knows none of it. Like he's wearing a white coat and he's probably getting paid for every vaccine he gives. And he's like, I don't know, the CDC says do it. So I'm saying do it. And I think that's one of the things people realized through COVID, that it's almost like you have no idea how deep this thing goes, where there are all of these institutions with all of these so-called supposed experts, and they don't know anything. You can't believe how dumb they are.
How much of it do you think is malice and how much is just like a stupid organic system?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of both involved, you know? I mean, I really do think the higher up to the top you get is where the percentage of stupid goes down and the percentage of malice goes way up.
Yeah.
And then the lower down, I think it's, like the inverse of that.
Yeah, because we don't have to talk much about Bitcoin today, and I don't know how much you've paid attention to it, but going down this like Bitcoin rabbit hole is also exposed us to all this. We had it recently with Elizabeth Warren, right? Mm-hmm. She's got this anti-crypto army, right? She's anti everything to do with us, and she had a banking select committee or whatever it is they do over in Congress. And she had all these questions for Jamie Dimon, and you could tell it was all rehearsed. You could tell every part of it was rehearsed, and Jamie Dimon saying that he would ban it, yet JP Morgan are involved. They're what is it, active participant? What do they call
Authorized
it? Authorized participant in these ETFs this week. And, once you start seeing both, like once you become an expert on a subject, like we're experts in Bitcoin, and you see the politicians attack it wrongly with misinformation, and then you see the media constantly write about it with misinformation, it makes me just go, well, what else are they wrong on?
Right.
And it appears to be everything.
It's just about, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like everything. And so, we've been going through all these layers, and then I was like, well, what do you do? Like, what do you do? Dave, what do you do? Like, what do you do with all this? And that's where I've got to the point where I'm like, I'm kind of libertarian, but I'm not. I'm in that I don't trust any government anymore. I don't vote. I didn't vote in the last one. I'm not gonna vote. But what do you do? Like, what do you do instead?
Well, not trusting the government's a good start. And like it's one of these things where the analogy I kind of use, it's almost like if you were bit by a snake or something, and you have like the antidote to it, but the antidote is up at the top of a mountain.
Yeah,
and this mountain is really difficult to climb. And it's like, okay, well, that's what we need to do. Now, I'm not saying that's easy, but that is the answer. Is like you have to get that, and you have to shoot it, and you have to inject it into yourself. And so, from my perspective, like the answer is a drastic reduction in the size of governments, the amount of power that governments have. Now, how you get to that is a much more difficult path. But I think there's basically two like sides that you have to attack from. And this is, there's a reason why governments use propaganda, because it's effective.
Yeah.
But it's also because it's necessary. Like they couldn't just institute lockdowns. They have to like scare you, convince you it's the right move, and then institute lockdowns. And they do these things all the time. This constantly happens where they'll float out an idea to gauge the temperature, to see how much resistance there is to this. And if there's a lot of resistance, they pull back and they don't do it. And if there's not, they implement it. And so basically I'm saying the one prong of the approach is that we have to break their propaganda. So counter their propaganda, expose their propaganda. And you see when people do this, they get very concerned about it. And they're right to be concerned. They're very concerned when like Joe Rogan is calling out the COVID regime's bullshit. Mm-hmm. They get very scared about that because he's too big to be able, he's like unplugging all these people from their control.
They try to cancel him.
Yeah, that's right. And then the other element is that you need elites to get on board with the freedom program. And you see something like, even like, I'm not saying he's doing it perfect, but even Elon Musk buying Twitter or something like that. Mm-hmm. You need people who are powerful, are very wealthy, to like kind of get on board, because I think both of those elements are necessary to shape any type of like restructuring of society, where you need to have some type of mass appeal, and then you also have to have very powerful people, who are on board with it. So I think what makes me optimistic is that I think we have a lot more of that than we've ever had before, certainly at any point in my lifetime. Uh-huh. There's more corruption in the government. Probably we're at an all-time high with that also. But I think we actually have a shot to kind of like steal the narrative and the control moving forward.
Do you think it needs to be coordinated, or do you think that there's almost like this organic response?
No, I don't think it needs to be coordinated. I think it's probably better off if it's not. Because if it's all coordinated, then it's easier to be corrupted. Whereas if it's like Bitcoin, right? If it's completely decentralized, that's kind of the beauty of it, that you can't really corrupt the whole thing. So that's no. I think it's great that it's this is one of the things that I think is so amazing right now. Is I'm sure you've had this experience too. But you ever just see anything like you see some video online and you're like, oh, this guy's really awesome. I never heard about this guy before. And then you like look at the video and it's like 700,000 views. You're like, oh, this guy's huge. You know what I mean? But I never heard of him. How many shows are there like that? How many podcasts are there right now that have 100,000 views an episode? There's like tons. And we don't even know about like the vast majority of them. But that guy is getting maybe in the key demo as many people as MSNBC's daytime show.
Probably more.
Yeah. And so there's something kind of cool about that. I think that's like that stuff gives me a lot of hope.
But going back into like the political area,
Mm-hmm.
because I seem to remember you were involved with the Libertarian Party, right?
Yeah, still am.
Yeah. And so I know within like libertarian circles that you don't all agree on everything. Some people like no government, some people like small government. But I think that's one of the areas I always struggle with, Dave. Is like I feel like I could align with the libertarians for small government because then they've got a purpose within the state. Because no government libertarians is like, well, how do you beat this? But I think you can you make it less less worse? Can you like? I see like in the UK, we essentially have the left and the right. We have conservatives and Labour, and they kind of pull left and right, but the whole beast grows. But if you had a libertarian movement, can you argue big v small?
Wait, so I'm sorry. So are you asking within the libertarian world?
Yeah.
Small?
Yeah. Well, so look, in the libertarian world, that you've got, like I say, if there's some people in the Bitcoin world who are libertarians, they're just for no government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Don't associate with any form of government. They don't agree with any form of politics. They want an anarcho-capitalist world, right? But my view is like, if you had a libertarian political movement, at least you can then try, like what's happening with Milei in Argentina.
Sure.
You can try and then reduce the size.
Yeah. So I agree with that. So I do think that I think anarcho-capitalism is essentially correct in theory.
Yeah.
And that would be the ideal way to structure a society. That there's really, when you think about it, there's no logical or moral argument for the existence of government.
Yeah.
Like there's no reason why we need to, if you don't think that we need a violent monopoly for the production of wheat and grain, and there's no reason why you need it for law or courts or roads. It's totally arbitrary, and there's no reason why there can't be competing forces in a market. We basically, in the Western world, almost everyone recognizes that communism is a failure, and that the idea that everything is centrally planned and run by a monopoly is at the very least terrible for producing these things.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why you can't logically apply that to everything. And likewise, morally speaking, there is no moral argument that the idea which is common in the West now is basically that, okay, we're not saying we're monarchies anymore. We're not saying there's like none of us think, or at least none of us explicitly think that our governments rule because they have divine right to rule. The mythology is that they derive their rights from the people.
Yep.
The problem with that is it's just logically incoherent. I mean, how can a government derive rights from the people that the people themselves don't have? None of us believe that we have the right. If any of us behaved the way a government did, we'd all agree that we should be thrown in jail.
Of course.
Like if any of you robbed someone, if you killed someone, if you kidnapped someone, this is stuff government does every single day.
Yeah.
So how do they get the right to do that derived from us? This is clearly just pure mythology that makes no sense. So the ANCAPs are right in that sense. But then if you're talking about the ANCAPs who say, well, we shouldn't be involved in politics at all, and we shouldn't try to infiltrate and reduce the size of government or in any way participate in the political process. The problem with that is that anarcho-capitalists are like a teeny percentage of the population. And if you just abandon the political process, then no one hears your ideas. And the libertarianism had its biggest moment when Ron Paul was running for president. And it's not even necessary that he won the presidency or anything like that. But the point is that because it was a congressman running for president talking about all of these things, millions of people listened to it. At least half of the libertarian world is a libertarian because Ron Paul ran for president. I am. So it would be so ridiculous for me to say, no, a libertarian should never run for anything, because that's probably the best way to spread the ideas. So, and also I just think that, you do end up kind of like you were getting at, like you make the perfect the enemy of the good. So like, yes, I would like to repeal the income tax, but if we could reduce it, that's better than not reducing it. So it's still, I think it's still necessary to try. But I also do think there's lots of different, ways to attack. A lot of libertarians are very big into homeschooling their kids.
Yeah.
There's the Free State Project in New Hampshire where they're about like, relocating and getting more liberty-minded people in one area. There's Bitcoin, there's lots of different things. And I think they're all great, attack on all fronts. But I do think the political aspect is very important also.
Is right now like is it a big time for like the libertarian movement for the circles you mix in? Do you feel like you're kind of pushing against an open door now? Are people looking for something different?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there were a lot of us, particularly the COVID stuff gave us like some wind behind our backs because a lot of the libertarians were the best on the COVID insanity, and we had some advantages. Everybody has their priors, but if going into COVID, your priors were, I believe in liberty and I don't trust the government, it kind of gave you an advantage, you know what I mean, to how to think about lockdowns or mandates or whatever. So that helped. I mean, even look, who was I'm not as familiar with like British politics, but in America, who were the best guys on COVID in Congress? It was Rand Paul and Thomas Massie. They were like the best guys. Thomas Massie was like the only guy who was standing up to the insane spending. Rand Paul was grilling Fauci every other week up there and embarrassing him. And it's not a coincidence that they're the most libertarian-leaning senator and congressman, And so that Klaus Schwab just recently brought up libertarianism.
Did he?
And how this was a threat to
of course
their,
he did.
So I think there is I think we've definitely grown much more. I mean, there are people who still have a misconception about what libertarianism is, but almost everybody knows the name. Like they're vaguely familiar with the concept of what a libertarian is. So I think we've gained more influence. There's still a lot of work to be done.
What do you think those misconceptions are?
Oh, well, I mean, I just think there's all types of things where people, you libertarians believe everyone should be living alone in the woods or something like that. Or as I heard someone the other day saying that, like, the problem with libertarianism is that if you don't trade with other people, then we all have to, be subsistence farmers or something. And I'm like, wait, what do you think? What do you think it is we're arguing for? And there's, I mean, I probably couldn't list all of them, but a lot of people don't exactly know what it is, but more do than ever before.
Yeah, well, I don't even remember in the UK anyone standing up to the bullshit.
No, I don't remember it.
There was like nobody.
No.
And even
not in government.
Even Boris Johnson claims that he's a libertarian. I mean, he clearly isn't.
No, he's not.
You were done by the text, weren't you? The Matt Hancock text.
Did you see that?
Do you know about this?
So
I don't
Matt,
think so.
Matt Hancock was the health secretary during COVID, and it came out afterwards. Like someone was writing a biography on him, and they'd given this person his phone, and in it there was like obviously all the WhatsApp texts that he'd sent during COVID, and they all got released.
I mean, how stupid are you to give a journalist your phone and just say, "Look at all my texts"?
But there was one text in particular where it was talking about like one of the variants, and it was like he was a health secretary texting, I can't remember who, but one of the texts was like, "When do we release this on the public and scare the shit out of them?" Like that's not a direct quote, but "scare the shit out of them" was, and that for me, I was like, burn it all down. Like this is awful.
Yeah. Yeah, it was kind of like a real eye opener to like they don't give a shit.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting thing where, okay, so if you think about this, right? Like thinking about wars and how crazy war is, and then think about the fact that there are these private interests that get filthy rich off of wars, and we all kind of know this is true, right? Like there are companies that make hundreds of billions of dollars out of mass murder campaigns. Mm-hmm. And there are politicians who will lie through their teeth to sell a war so that their buddies can make money. And just think about like that level of evil. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if that person is willing to do, now we have this weird distinction where we go like, oh, well, that they're willing to do that to like those people, but they wouldn't like do that to us. But that's insane. It's almost like if you were letting a pedophile babysit your kid, And you were like, well, yeah, they've molested other kids, but like, I don't think they'll do that. It's like, no, fuck that. If they would do that to other kids, you keep that person the hell away from your kid. And it's just like that. Like the fact that they'll do this, they have no problem. I mean, you can find all types of people talking about whether it's the wars, the terror wars in the Middle East, or whether it's the war in Ukraine, about how for strategic reasons, we want to bleed Russia dry. So we want to support this war in Ukraine. And it's like, oh, so I guess the Ukrainians are just, we could just sacrifice them. I've heard people make arguments about supporting Vietnam, the war in Vietnam, where they've said, Bill Maher said this, as a matter of fact, lots of people have made this point, that they go, well, it was a necessary war because we had to really show the commies that we meant business. And we were willing to go fight a war halfway around the world. So don't think we won't take you on. And it's like, okay, I guess that just sucks for the 5 million Vietnamese and Cambodians who were killed over there. Like, you just have that attitude that human beings are expendable, a means to an end.
And the American soldiers that had no say.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. Sure, they were forced to go over there and die by the tens of thousands. And I mean, how many? An entire generation of like a homeless epidemic that followed that. So anyway, people like that. Yeah, they'll do that to you too.
I just don't. I still struggle to comprehend how people can make those decisions. Like, what level of psycho do you have to be able to go to justify a war for monetary reasons? I just can't comprehend that in my mind, how people do that.
Yeah, no,
it's just so weird.
I think that's one of the issues with humanity, is that we kind of like, we project ourselves onto others, and that's how you understand the world, and it's positive in a lot of ways. I mean, that's how you have empathy. Is that the basic test is that you imagine that happening to you or someone you cared about, and you're like, oh, I'd feel awful, and then you have some sense that, oh, well, I feel awful for that person. But the problem with that is that it's very difficult for people who aren't predators to, you know what I mean? Like, understand how the predator behaves, because you project yourself into their mind. And you're like, but if you just look at it, like if you intellectualize it and look, objectively speaking, there are people who will torture children. I don't even mean governments or whatever. I mean, there's sick people who will do that. And you think to yourself, you're doing that, how could you ever do that? You would just feel so horrible, like something would stop you. Yet there are these other people out there who will do that. And I think that's the way people have to think about governments, that there are just sick people who are predators.
Yeah, but do you think that's almost spreading a sickness? And it's a loaded question that I've been struggling with the whole Israel-Palestine thing. And the reason I've been struggling is the whole pick a side thing. I just fucking hate it. It's all bullshit. And when it first happened, there were people like Dave, I think it was Dave Rubin specifically said, let's glass. We need to glass Palestine. It's like, hold on a fucking second. There's like 2 million people who live there. Yep. And Ben Shapiro is similar. And look, and I get their cultural background and why they're, upset with the attacks that happened. I mean, they were horrific. But at the same time, with like no empathy, it's like, let's go and fuck them. And like everything that happened with Hamas was obviously gross and disgusting. Yeah. But why did I really struggled to understand why people couldn't hold two truths, that what Hamas did was terrible and what now is happening in Gaza is terrible. It was like people could only hold one truth at a time. And I didn't understand that.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a lot of that, but that's right. Obviously, you would hope that anyone could just look at that and go like, yeah, of course what Hamas did on October 7th was terrible. And of course, innocent women and children who had nothing to do with that they matter too. Like and the funny thing is, like, for the same reasons that October 7th was horrible. Because it's a horrible thing to do, is like to kill innocent women and children and innocent men. That's an awful thing to do, right? So it's still an awful thing to do if you're doing that in response to them. And I just think that, like, because, I'm Jewish too, and I come from that background. I mean, I'm not like Ben Shapiro Jewish. Like, I wasn't like raised an Orthodox Jew. But I mean, Dave Rubin's not that. And it's like, I just don't understand how anyone can't look at the situation. And it's this intense level of dishonesty to me, where you can see these. I don't know if you like, Ben Shapiro has these like a couple quick videos, like the history of Israel in 4 minutes.
Looks evil on the camera.
Yeah,
it's like a weird camera,
like a 4-minute video where he'll go over the history of Israel. And Dennis Prager had another one, and both of them are like super viral, like have like millions and millions of views on them. And they'll tell the story, and it's like, I'm not exaggerating. Like, it sounds like I'm like straw manning what their argument is. But if you go watch Dennis Prager's video, I mean, it literally goes like this. It's like the Israel-Palestine conflict is the simplest conflict to explain. One side wants peace, and the other side wants the Jews to die. One side wants to live their lives, and the other side hates everything good and decent and is motivated by pure evil. And like, that's it. And he'll tell the story of the history, and he'll go, in 1948, the Jews declared their independence. And then all of the Arab countries attacked them. Like, as if that's the story. And there's nothing else that you need to know here. And like, it does almost like leave the viewer to wonder, like, so are they just possessed by the devil? Like, what is, you know? And to me, it's just like, look, these are the basic facts. And obviously there's been a lot of violence on both sides.
Yep.
And there's been horrendous things that Arabs have done to innocent Israeli citizens. And there's been a whole lot more horrendous things that the Israeli government has done to innocent Palestinians and others. But the basic thing that you can't get away from in the conflict, and it's so insane to me that in modern times, like, this is 2024, we're not having this conversation in 1620. Like, a bunch of European settlers decided that they wanted to start a state in the middle of the Middle East, and they wanted to create a new state there. And this project, the Zionist project, when materialized, involved kicking out over 700,000 Arabs who were living there and had been living there for generations. They were either forcibly kicked out or they fled and weren't allowed to return. And this is in 1947, 1948. Yeah. And then in 1967, there's a war. And, you know, I'm actually kind of like I'm a little agnostic on the 67 war. Like, I think it's probably wasn't necessary for Israel to attack, but, you know, Egypt did start mobilizing their military against that. So even if you give it to Israel, they had a right to preemptively attack, and then, you know, and then you could argue that they defensively fought with Jordan after that. But they seized control of the West Bank and Gaza at the end of the 1967 war, a 6-day war. And they took control of these areas, and they've had them ever since.
Yeah.
They've occupied them ever since. Since 1967, the Palestinians in these areas have lived under totalitarianism. They have absolutely no rights. If the IDF decides this road's closed, point my gun at you, get in your house, grandma down on the ground. If the IDF shoves your grandma down on the ground and whatever, you have no recourse, no citizenship, no voting rights, no freedom of travel, nothing. Since 1967. And like, how can you just get away from that in the conflict? How is that not the most basic thing for in modern times to go, yeah, you can't do that. You can't do that to another group of people. You have to stop. And then if you tell the story like that, people will say, well, you're cherry picking. You're not pointing out all of the, you know, times that Arabs did something wrong. But come on, man, that's the fundamental bottom line of the story. And it would be like if I was just talking about what an abomination slavery is and how horrible it is to like kidnap people from Africa and then put them up on an auction and sell them, and they have no rights, and you claim them as property, and then, you know, you're just like whipping them and abusing them and raping their women and separating their families, and then you go, well, you know, Dave's cherry picking. He didn't mention that Nat Turner's rebellion killed a bunch of innocent people. And you're like, well, yeah, okay, fine. But like, the bigger story here is you can't enslave people. And I don't understand how anybody can honestly look at this conflict and not go, yeah, look, that's kind of the central underlying thing here. You can't keep people in these conditions. And you definitely can't keep them in these conditions and then expect them to act civilized. And like, hey, stop fighting back.
But this is just common sense, right?
Yeah.
And all through like, I had a real period I was like, fuck this, because I consistently over and over again saw the same people, opinion leaders, people with podcasts, millions of followers, saying obviously intellectually dishonest things.
Yeah.
And just not willing to be honest, not willing to understand that there is another side to this story, that there are a group of people who are living without, like you said, without any rights. Yet they're getting, everything they're saying is getting popular support. And there's very, very few people who are coming out like you have done and have been honest and said, look, you have to look at the context of the whole history. And I don't understand. Well, I mean, like, I do understand it. The nuance doesn't often sell.
Yeah, well, that's right.
And
And it's and unfortunately that is the case. I mean, look, I'm happy. Like, it does sell to some people,
Yeah.
and so I'm like, hey, let's find all the people who can, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, are actually persuaded by a nuanced argument. But it is true that, you know, there is just this dynamic, and I'm sure social media kind of elevates this, where it's like, well, if you take the most extreme one-sided position here, you're going to blow up and get a lot of traction. And then if you take the most extreme against that, you know what I mean? Like, so, and you see this even with, like, say, like the feminist movement, and now there's the whole like manosphere thing. You know what I mean? And so what's the answer? It's like, but so I have to either believe that, like, we live in a patriarchy and all women are oppressed, or I have to be Andrew Tate and be like, you know, get a fancy car and pimp bitches, and that's like the alternative. It's like, how about just what?
My dad asked me the other day who Andrew Tate is.
Oh, yeah, you did tell me.
my dad, he lives in Ireland. He came over and he sat down. There was like a documentary on it. And he was like, who's Andrew Tate? And I was just about to go. I was like, you know what? Don't worry about it. Let's not watch it. You don't need to. He ended up watching it.
Did he?
Yeah, he did. He's like, he's a fucking idiot.
So now he's pimping bitches.
Yeah.
No, he's right. So anyway, he's a millionaire now, and he's pimping bitches. So things went good.
But that's caused a whole. Like, my daughter, I've got a 13-year-old daughter. She came home one day and she was like, Dad, all the boys at school love Andrew Tate. I was like, really? She was like, yeah, all the boys at school love Andrew Tate. And I was like, this isn't good.
No.
Like, this is not good that a group of 13, 12-year-old boys love Andrew Tate. And look, and it's not that he isn't saying the occasional thing that's right. Like, throw a
No,
dart,
he
dartboard.
does. He says some things that are right. But see,
Yeah.
that's the most, you know, that's the most fucked up thing about it, is that it's like, look, it's almost like this side handed all of this fertile ground to a guy like Andrew Tate to come in, because look, when he says something that's right, he does a great job of saying it,
Yeah.
and it's really compelling.
Yeah.
You know? And then people get sold off that. And then also, you know, look, he's a guy who is like rich and tough and has fancy cars, and that's automatically going to be attractive to young men, especially young men who don't have that, which is all of his audience. But it's almost like in the same way. Like, I remember when I think it was on your show when you had Scott Horton there, and he was kind of talking about like the fertile ground that the Treaty of Versailles gave for the rise of the Nazis. And I'm not saying Andrew Tate's a Nazi or anything like that. It's just like a logical analogy. But I'm just saying that it's like, look, like you give this fertile ground for, if the whole rest of the world, the whole power structure, the whole, you know, post World War I winners are like, screw you, Germany. You are to be internationally humiliated, you know, plundered and abused, and you take full responsibility for this war, that there's no argument that World War I was 100% Germany's fault. It's like, that just doesn't make sense. It's not even true for World War II, but it's definitely not true for World War I. But you're to be, you know, globally humiliated. This once proud people now must grovel and beg and suffer. And then Adolf Hitler rises up and says, you know, screw that, and screw all the people who are telling you that. And everyone flocks to him. So it's like, this is the problem when, like, and look, I'm 40. So I did kind of like escape before so much of the latest woke insanity is. But you got to think, like, how old are the kids who are listening to Andrew Tate? I mean, you're telling me it's 13-year-olds, right?
Well, I know.
I mean, I'm not saying that's exclusively, but there's a group of 13-year-olds there who are listening to him. And I'm sure there's a lot of 20-something-year-olds who are listening to him. These are people who grew up in, I think a lot of us, like even at our age, don't understand how woke the environment that these kids are growing up in. They're being told every single day that their manhood is wrong, that it is some type of egregious crime to just be a boy, and that everything about them is somehow to be altered and changed. And look, even just with the, like, think about like the DEI stuff, that from the perspective of, say, like a straight white man, like, the ask is just unreasonable. Look, it's just like I'm saying with the Palestinians or the Germans or any of it. The ask is that Germans be humiliated. The ask of the Palestinians is that you live in slavery. The ask, you know, like, these are nobody's going to feel that way. And the ask of straight white men currently is that, hey, we're as a society going to do everything we can to have less of you in the positions that you want to be in. We're going to go out of our way to make sure you are discriminated against from every level of this system, from legal to corporate to academia, all of it. And that's just such an unreasonable ask to ask of any group. And then, of course, in the same way that when we were discriminating against black people, Malcolm X starts talking and they go, hey, I like the sound of this guy, you know? And so anybody who's speaking out against that stuff is going to have a huge advantage. And then, unfortunately, it never tends to be the most reasonable, level-headed guy.
Well, it's an overcorrection.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and the problem with that overcorrection is those people who are looking for this more, like a bit more equality. It's like, I look at someone like my daughter, I'm glad we grew up in a world where it's like there's a bit more opportunity for her. Like it's still a man's world. Like it's much easier for me in business to go out and have meetings and do so. It's much easier. Always has been. Always. I don't know if it always will be, but we at least live in a world where
it always will be, or it will be much worse.
Yeah, but like my daughter, she recognized, like when you have a daughter, you recognize where they see their place in the world. And she recognizes that it's still kind of a man's world, right? But she can still go and do what she wants. But Andrew Tate is the overcorrection, which is, we've got another guy. There's this guy in the UK at the moment called Joey Barton, ex-professional footballer. He's basically coming out against we've got a massive growth in women's football. I don't know. I own a football team, right? We have a men's team and a ladies team. There's been historically, ladies football was banned. They were actually banned from playing football. Over the last 10, 20 years, there's been a massive investment in ladies football and it's grown. It's doing well. The investment is an overcorrection, and I think a good overcorrection because they weren't given the opportunity. But what you see now, you've got more women coming out who are maybe commentating on games or are part of the pundits in the studio. And he's come out against this. The other overcorrection, he's saying they're not qualified to do this. They shouldn't be doing that. But what that's doing is sending this really negative message back to all the girls who've got these new role models they're seeing who are making it in a man's world. And they're this overcorrection that I don't think is good itself. But I don't know what the balance is, Dave.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, the thing is that if you really look at, say like the rise of feminism in general, right? I used to, when I would argue with feminists, like not on podcasts or stuff, just like in life. Because, I was
just down the street.
Yeah, well, I was in New York City. Well, it was more like a girl who worked at a comedy club or something like that. It was because I was like in New York City, a very like liberal, progressive area, and this was like maybe 2014, 2015. So it was before Trump and everything got insane, and like those people just wouldn't even talk to you, and they were like, "Well, you're a Nazi." But back then they were like interested.
Yeah.
And so I would always say this to feminists to try to like kind of understand it. So I'd be like, okay, so feminism really, I mean, you talk about the suffragettes in the first wave, but what we are talking about, really feminism as we know it is second wave and on. So this really starts in the 1960s and then women enter the workforce in the 1970s. So why do you think that happened in the 1970s? Like, why didn't it happen in the 1920s? Or in the 1820s, or in the 1620s, or like, why is it just that at this time, women figured out that they wanted equality and men figured out that, yeah, we ought to give it to them? Like, why did it happen right now? And almost all of these third wave feminists would never have an answer for this. Like, they would just be like, well, eventually we just got sick and tired of it. And I was trying to like explain it. It's like, well, no, look, it's like this, okay? Try to walk me through how feminism is going to happen in 1780. Try it. Like, you tell me, how's it going to work? Do you know what life was like in 1780? Okay, so the overwhelming, like the vast majority of people were doing agricultural work, back-breaking agricultural work. You were going to have 7 or 8 kids because several of them were probably going to die. And so you had to have a lot of kids if you were going to continue the generation on. And as soon as anyone was able-bodied, they were working, because if not, you starved to death. And you're probably... like you go into winters looking at the person to the left and the person to the right and wondering who's going to come out of this winter, okay? Now, during this time, if the woman's going to have 7 kids, let's say, that's 7, let's say 7 years, because I'll count the 3 months after being pregnant too, when you're basically just taking care of a newborn and recovering from what delivery was in 1780. You know what I mean?
Which you might not even have survived yourself.
Yes, right. So you're going to just have to do the work in the house, and the man's going to have to go and do the work on the farm. You're 6 months pregnant. You know what I mean? Like, and by the way, the work in the house was really, really hard work. Like, that taking care of the house was incredible and very important too, because you get too many germs in there, someone gets sick. Like, you don't have modern medicine. It was really important to keep it as clean as you could. And anyway, so then you have the Industrial Revolution, and now it's less people are doing agricultural work, but it's grueling factory work, like really tough men factory work. Okay, how practical is it for women? So anyway, okay, so then we kind of advance out of the factory stage, and now all of a sudden we're at a place around the 1950s, 1960s, where a lot of people are working in an office. And the woman who's at home, she maybe isn't having 7 kids anymore. She may only be having 2 or 3 kids. And also now we've got all these things that we didn't have before, like electricity and washing machines and, you know, vacuum cleaners and all these. It's not the same job in the house anymore.
Yep.
And it's not the same job in the work anymore. And so it made sense because of technological advances that there was almost a point that people went, well, wait, there should be a reassessing here of these gender roles, which we've had for the entire existence of humanity. But for the first time, we're at a place where that's not so clear. Like if there's a really smart woman, even if she's gonna have a kid or 2, that may be only taking a couple years out of where she could potentially be working. And she's like, I wanna be a doctor, I wanna be a surgeon. And as a society, if someone's really talented at being a surgeon, we want them to be a surgeon. Like that's best for everybody.
Yep.
And so things changed. But the problem is that there's a couple things, right? So like number one, we're still genetically wired the same way we have been for hundreds of thousands of years. And so there's still kind of like these roles where you can see this all over the world when you equalize, like, and I mean literally by the sense of the word, like make the same, it makes men and women less happy. Because the vast majority of men and women still like to be masculine and feminine.
Yep.
And kind of to some degree fulfill traditional gender roles. But the other problem is that then you had this kind of leftist feminist movement come in, and their narrative was just totally removed from the truth. Their narrative was basically like, well, the reason we've always had these strict gender roles is because of sexism and oppression and patriarchy and because men are dicks. But that wasn't the story.
No.
That wasn't what was happening. It was a survival. It was the
Yeah.
only way we were going to survive. And the truth is that, it's so the opposite of what they say. Because as soon as we got to that level where it was like office jobs, not grueling factory work, the men stepped right aside and went, okay, women can come. Like there was almost, I mean, not none, but there wasn't massive pushback. They got that, and women entered the workforce. So the problem now is that it's almost like what we should be doing is that men and women, because I think anyone should know this, is that we're not competing with each other. We complement each other.
Yep.
We should be working out, okay, like how do we move forward now so that we're all fulfilled and we're all happy? Instead, it became this kind of like war of the sexes where it's like, oh no, you're an evil oppressor. And then, you know, and this is a lot of it's online too.
Yeah.
It's like, well, no, you need to get back in the kitchen. And meanwhile, if you look at like any healthy marriage, it's nothing like that.
I know.
That's not how it actually works or should work.
But again, it's an overcorrection. It's like all these things sound like overcorrections, and then a reaction to the overcorrection.
Yeah, unfortunately, that does seem to always be the cycle.
Yeah, but then it also feels like everything is wrapped in you know what? It was Danny brought it up beforehand. Did you the Jimmy Carr interview where he said it's objectively the best time ever, but it's subjectively the worst time ever? Did you hear him say this?
I don't remember that line exactly.
But
that's an interesting
objectively,
way to put
like
it.
we have the best medicines, the best technology, you know, the majority of us living warm homes, you know, we've got everything we could possibly want, but everything's is feeling a bit shit right now. Like everyone's at war, everyone's miserable. We've got like real wars breaking out. We've got political warfare. It's just everything feels a bit shit, like it's all breaking.
Yeah. I think there's something to that. I think it feels to some degree almost like if you were on like a jetpack and shooting up to the sky, and then the jetpack died, and you're like up there and you're like, okay, we're still really high right now, but it sure does feel like we're about to come crashing down. But I also do think that and like I'm familiar with what's his name? Steven Pinker. What's his name? Anyway, he basically makes this argument that, look, by all these objective metrics, we're at the best place ever in human history. I will say that I think as I get older and it becomes more obvious to me that there are a lot of things I always wanted in my life, like professionally. And I was certainly like in my 20s and 30s, that was really what I was focused on. I wanted to be a stand-up comedian, wanted to be a successful libertarian, you know, commentator and things like that. And I've achieved some of those things. And it's the older I get, the more I realize how unimportant all of it is.
Yeah.
And how my family is really all that matters to me. Like it's really all that matters. It's like, it's not even like that's first and this is second. It's like that's first and nothing else matters. Like this is just a means to an ends to support my family, you know? And I got like little kids, and I have a beautiful, great wife, and I really love my family very much. And I just realized that that's actually the most important thing. And I think that we do live in a world where it seems like that's more difficult for more people to have that. And so if you don't have like meaning and purpose and family, don't get me wrong. I mean, the medical stuff is really, particularly of all of the things that are better than they've ever been.
Yeah.
That's like the most important one, is just that there's people who would die if we didn't have some of the stuff we have today. And I know that very well. But it does seem like there's something, there's like a deeper, more profound thing that we've kind of lost in Western civilization.
Yeah.
And this is across Western civilization. And that is kind of hard to quantify. But there's no question. Look, the story of, say, really the 20th and 21st century is, and now I would look at this from my libertarian lens, where I would say like everything in the market got so much better than it ever was before. We got so much richer than we've ever been. But the government.
But did we?
Well, richer? Like in what sense?
Well, like, with what we do, we look at money a lot.
Sure.
So like we look at GDP growth, and then we know what is real GDP growth. And with this, I've traveled a lot with this job. I've been out to Argentina, I've been to Lebanon, we've been out to Africa, we've been to Venezuela, we've been all over the place. And I feel like whenever I go to these countries, I'm almost seeing in the future. And what I'm seeing is like this erosion of the middle class, the massive wealth divide, huge amounts of inflation, masses of corruption. And then I come back and I look and say where I'm in the UK, I'll look at Europe, I'll look at the US, and I feel like I think we're on that trajectory.
Well, I think it is. I think looking at the money is a good place to start.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think that's really what's going on here. So there are these things that seem almost like it seems like they would be competing, like it would have to be one or the other, but it's really kind of both of them happening at the same time. And I think that, in essence, is the story of the United States of America, and in general, most Western countries, is that the kind of the Enlightenment and then leading into kind of like the liberal revolution, and which really was like one of the biggest revolutions in world history, that we went from being kind of like, we went from the old regime to the new regime of like where it's not completely, everything in life is not completely dominated by government and caste and family and all of this, which is what most of human history was. And it was much more of like an individualist society. Now, America, of course, after we had some problems with you guys, and then we're over it. We're friends again. We wrote this declaration thing, but look, at least the idea of the country, not that this is entirely historically accurate, but the idea was to be the most restrained government in the history of the world. That we're starting from the Declaration of Independence. The premise is that all men are supposed to be free, yada yada. Forget these exceptions of people who aren't free, but whatever. That was the idea. And then the Constitution was really all about checks and balances on the role of government, and that there's no group, no arm of the government was supposed to be able to consolidate too much power. And what happened in this experiment is that free markets and capitalism created a level of wealth that humanity had never seen before. I mean, if you look at, like, say, a chart of wealth over the history of humanity, it's just nothing until like the 1860s, 1870s, when it starts to be created. There was no such thing as wealth that would even register on a scale compared to what we think of it as before then. But with this rise in wealth then came the ability for the government to grow with it.
And it's correct.
Right. And so when there's all of this, there's so much more money now, well, taxing somebody, a couple percent, I tax you 2%, you're not going to fight a revolution over me taxing you 2% when you're starting to be pretty wealthy. Whereas if you're dirt poor, you might, what I mean? Like if I'm trying to come take some grain from you and you're starving, you might fight back about that. But no one's going to fight back if they're making $100,000 a year over you taxing a couple $1,000s. And then you go more and more and more and more. And so you see this over the 20th century where the governments just grow, all of them grow so big.
Yep.
And so while we have, anyway, so to the point you were saying before, if you look at the money, so what's happened is that the money is losing all of its value. So there's like crazy inflationary economies. And most people out there like think of inflation as like, yeah, the last 3 years the CPI was up. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the constant inflationary economy where you're always printing money, devaluing the currency, and we just take it as a given that we know prices are always rising.
Yeah.
And we know if your grandma talks to you about, she's like, well, I used to pay a nickel for a can of Coke. And you're like, that's just, or a bottle of Coke, I guess it would have been.
Well, I think we get sold on the idea that's a signal of a growing economy. Like when
Yes.
I was growing up, and you'd see about the inflation number on the news, it'd be at 2%. I always thought that meant, oh, well, the economy's growing. This is success. Like, and if prices are going up, it's because the economy's growing. It's only when we've hit recent high inflation. I mean, even today, we bought 2 coffees and 3 sandwiches, and it was $66.
Yeah. Welcome to New York City,
What
man.
the fuck?
Well, because the prices here, and this is such an expensive, I mean, like London's a real expensive
Yeah.
city too, and Amsterdam's, you got some expensive
Yeah.
cities over there too. But New York is, so when the inflation's high, New York, you literally look at it and you're just like, should I drop my pants and spread my cheeks?
Yeah,
Like, what are
let's
you
go.
looking for here? But now that it got so out of control over the last few years, people are noticing it. But like you said, even, and I was the same way when I was a kid. It was like, oh, that's just a law of nature.
Yeah.
Like prices go up. That's just like what happens. This is the way. But really, the sign of a growing economy naturally would be prices going down. I mean, that's what should happen. Like if we're picking apples by hand, and then I go, look, I just invented a machine that can pick 100 times as many apples as you could, and I don't have to hire people and pay them anymore to do it, and I can just turn on this machine and it picks all the apples. What's going to happen to the price of an apple? Theoretically, it should go way down,
Yep.
right? So as we get better at producing things, we should be seeing a reduction in prices, and that is kind of the sign of a healthy economy, because then poor people can afford more apples. Like that works out well for them. But of course, because as I'm sure you guys know well, because the government has monopoly control over the money supply, they're always incentivized to expand it, because taxes are unpopular, but printing money. That's like no one really, because you're robbing from people, but the effect of robbing from them doesn't come till later. And then even when it comes later, they don't really know that it was your fault. It's much trickier and more deceptive than just taxing people. You owe me this much money. So they have this incentive. And because of that, so while we've gotten richer and richer from technological advancements, we've gotten poorer and poorer from the value of our dollar being worse. So in a net position, I think, in some ways, you could say we're still obviously much richer than by any standard, I am much richer than my grandfather was.
Yep.
There's just no real arguing that. But at the same time, in my grandfather's day, first of all, he could pay for both of his kids to go to college without taking any loans out. He could work a job just in a factory. All he had to do was go stand online, and he got a job.
Buy a house.
Job, he bought a house, and his wife didn't have to work. And he supported his kids, and he had his wife at home who could take care of the kids. And he, and like, that we've totally lost. So yes, my TV would blow my grandfather's dick off if he saw it. You know what I mean? He'd be like, what? That is the most incredible image I've ever seen. And like, I have a supercomputer in my pocket right now. And like, I have things that he never had. And on a more serious, level than that, there are like my son had a medical condition that my grandfather's son would have died if he had that, like they would not have survived by this. So that's pretty goddamn valuable. But at the same time, and I think it's right at the heart of it, is the money, because our money's been destroyed. There and also in addition to that, just like government regulation in different industries has driven the prices up so high. That's like, I know a family member of mine, my wife's family, but I guess mine too. That where he's young, he's like in his early 30s, and he's a good dude, man. And he does the right thing. Like he's got a blue collar job, but he works hard. He's like he's up every morning and he's at work every day and he works his ass off. And I don't know exactly what he makes, but he's maybe makes like $70K a year or something like that. And he's just talking to me about like him and his wife, they want to buy a house. And he's like, this is insane, dude. Like the price of houses, this is insane. I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to do. And this isn't like some guy who's like, it's not like, I'll get a job, dude. It's not like someone who's not doing what they're supposed to do. Like he's doing what he's supposed to do. Yeah. And he's like, this is insane. Like, how the hell am I ever going to buy a house?
But you're seeing that all over social media now. You must have seen some of these videos.
Yeah.
There was one where there was that couple. I don't know if you saw, and it was the wife telling the video, and she was showing her parents' house.
Oh no, I don't.
Yeah, so she was showing her parents' house, this beautiful house. It was by a lake, and she was like, "This is where we live." And it was her and her husband have both got jobs. I mean, her grandfather worked on, and they're living in this like damp 1-bedroom apartment. And she's like, "This is insanity." But we're seeing endless videos like this. It's even worse.
Yeah,
Up in
I've seen a
Canada.
bunch. I've posted a few of them that I've seen, and like they're heartbreaking. And there's one I posted recently, and you never know with any of these individual videos. Like I don't know what the story really is, but in general, you're like, this is true for a lot of people. That was a wife who's just in tears, crying, and she was talking about how she's like, I work full time. My husband works more than full time. He puts in overtime, and she's like in tears. And she's like, every month we live paycheck to paycheck. We can afford our mortgage and groceries. She goes, by the way, our mortgage. We live in a 2-bedroom, very humble house.
Yep.
She goes, I just bought groceries and paid our health insurance and paid whatever other bills. And she goes, I have $126 to last me 2 weeks before we get our next paycheck in. And it's horrible, man. Like.
Well,
that's a sign of a society, like falling apart. It's not. It's one thing if the lazy bums aren't getting, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when hardworking people can't get by, and especially with all the technology we have, that's insane.
Yeah.
It makes no sense.
Well, it's like what our friend Jeff Booth says. He wrote this book called Price of Tomorrow. And he says, when the money isn't scarce, everything else is. And so the money just he said the money just floods into everything else. And I even see it. And like, I live in a little town called Bedford. It's not. It's just an outside of London little town. My first house was £100,000. And it was a 3-bedroom house with a garden. And I bought that, I don't know, 20 years ago. That house is probably 300,000 now.
Yeah.
And the jobs you were doing back then for 40,000, you're not getting 120,000 for that now.
No,
it's just not happening. And so I probably look in a similar way to you. You've got 2 kids. I've got 2 kids. They're a bit older. My son's 19. He's just started to ask about buying a house. Like, without any help, there is no chance he can buy a house. There's 0 chance. And that's why, we focus on the money so much. That's why we always come back to Bitcoin. We're like, and so like, I'm probably leading to the point where most people are listening. Like, when are you going to ask Dave about Bitcoin? When are you going to ask Dave about Bitcoin? It's like, have you looked at this? Have you looked much? Are you a Bitcoiner? Do you think about it much?
Yeah. I mean, I'm 100% for Bitcoin. I own a bit of it. Not that much, but I own a bit of it. I give credit to Guy Swan. You know who he is? He kind of orange pilled me. He was the guy who really kind of sold me on it.
He does all the books, all the narration of the books. Good guy.
Yeah, he's great. Super smart guy. And so I mean that's why I like Bitcoin, is just because it's like the ideal situation is to break government's monopoly on money. That's the most important thing. It's more important than anything else. And I'll tell you the real reason why I care about that is because of the issue of war. And that war really is like, I mean, like I said, when you just think about it, it's the most insane thing ever. If you really just like zoom out and I don't know, like take a hit of pot and like zoom out for a second, and you go like, it is so insane that we're at the level of civilization that we're at, and that war is still a regular thing. It's like, I don't know. It's like chattel slavery still existing or something. You're like, what? You haven't moved out of that yet? You still go on mass murder campaigns? Like, what the fuck is this?
Headline today, it came through on my BBC breaking news. Rishi Sunak briefs from cabinet tonight as UK and US weigh military strikes against Houthi rebels in Yemen. And it's just like another war.
Yeah, why not? Yeah. It's just like, you would think like, I mean, I'm just saying, like, with just the level of like these lights turn on and these cameras work and there's people walking down the street and we're all peacefully living in civilization. Just that, you'd go, there's no way you still do mass murder campaign. Like, there's no way that when, say, the war in Ukraine broke out, that like international law doesn't dictate that like Vladimir Putin and Zelensky and Biden and all of the, NATO leaders who are playing, they all have to get into a room. You guys can't leave the room until you've worked this out. Like, that's just that.
Yeah.
And if you scream and fight and whatever, fine. You can't leave until you work this out. This is just an unacceptable way to solve this problem. And
this is why we established the UN. Come on.
Well, that's in theory. I mean, I don't know if it's actually why, but but anyway. So, but like, to your point, if there is to be a UN, how's that not at least not the first rule? But it's not. And what governments always do every time and throughout history, what do governments always do when they go to war? They get off the gold standard.
Of course.
They get off whatever standard is limiting their ability to print up money. And so that is in essence the flaw of something like a gold standard, which I still think would be extremely preferable to what we have today. Anything that limited a government's ability to print money out of thin air would be excellent. But the problem with a gold standard is that, and we have enough examples in history to see this, is that they'll just get off it. When a war comes, they'll just abandon it and start printing money. And even if they are on a gold standard, like, because technically, I think before, what was it, 73 or 72, when Nixon took us off the gold standard?
71.
71,
71?
was it? Yeah, it's 1971. I'm sorry.
Yeah. We came off it first, which is before you.
Yes. Okay. So it was 71 for us. That's right.
Yeah.
But even before
Have you
that,
hold on. Have you not seen that website? WTF happened 71.
yeah. Although I will say, Gene Epstein, who is my economic guru, he has told me that some of those graphs and charts are all off and they're not doing it the right way. But there's no question that that was a huge event that changed, like that changed the economic future.
It's going to upset Ben. So the guy who edits this show is his website.
Well, you take it up with Gene Epstein. I'm not saying he's right or you're right, but he's a real smart guy. But maybe it wasn't from that site, but I think it was.
Yeah.
I think it was. But anyway, even before Richard Nixon took us off the gold standard, well, why did Nixon take us off the gold standard? And it was because we were already cheating.
Yeah.
And the French called our bluff, right? So they said,
give us our gold back.
Yes, that's right. So they said it was $35 an ounce was the deal. That dollars are redeemable for $35 an ounce. And the French were like, I think maybe the British too, but definitely the French were like, okay, we'll redeem that in now for gold. And then Nixon was like, they're trying to tank the dollar. It's like, but why? Why would that be tanking the dollar? It's like, oh yeah, because you don't actually have it, right? Because they all watched us through the 1960s where we had the creation of Medicare and we went to the moon and we fought the war in Vietnam and spending levels in general just right up. And they were looking at it and they were like, I don't think you actually have all this gold for all this money you're spending there. And so so that's another flaw in a gold standard is that governments can cheat. Governments can abandon it. Governments can cheat on it. So the idea of money being completely independent from governments, that I think is the ideal solution.
And it keeps us away from a potential CBDC.
Well, that's the other thing too, right? Like that's the big push right now. Yeah. It's almost like it's a weird thing. It is something out of like some type of crazy movie where you have like the protagonist, antagonist, kind of like where you have like the Bitcoin and then you have the central bank's version of Bitcoin. That's like, how about we just do it this way? Like where everything's evil and we can control everything you do. And they've said it. I mean, they even, I think it was the head of the European Central Bank, that lady who said something, you probably saw this clip, this is your guys' world, where she said something about how like the real problem with cryptocurrency is that challenges our monopoly on control over you, citizen.
She said the quiet bit out loud.
Yeah, like what? Like what? I thought I was just supposed to say that's what you really thought, but you never admitted it.
Hold on, she got community noted today on Twitter.
Oh, what did she do now?
Fucking brilliant. So she did a Q&A. Oh, it might not have been the same
Christine
one.
Lagarde?
Oh, no, it was a different one. Someone from the European Central Bank. She did a Q&A, and she was talking about some guy, I think he's called Bitcoin Pleb on Twitter, asked her a question about Bitcoin, and she came back and said, have you found it?
I'm just having a look. I don't know who you mean.
Anyway, she came back and said, no, the European Central Bank will never store Bitcoin. The digital euro will do the job of money. And they came back and said, community noted that the digital euro fails 3 of the functions of money. So it got completely destroyed on it.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah. Well, look, it's an interesting time for Bitcoin. I mean, I don't know if you followed these ETF launches yesterday. It was kind of a big deal. It's not,
I don't know much about it, but I did see people posting about it.
It's not good for Bitcoin itself in that it's a bunch of Bitcoin being centralized in BlackRock and Fidelity, but it's like the legitimacy it gives and it's the awareness it gives. But it is an interesting time, and the reason I like the Bitcoin compared to, did I say the Bitcoin?
You did say
yeah, what a fucking dick. I like Bitcoin as opposed to gold. Because gold, the problem with gold is that the decision to have a gold standard was centralized around the government. They made the decision. The choice to be on a Bitcoin standard is what we get to enforce it, because we're the ones using it. If you and I and Danny and everyone else uses Bitcoin, we enforce it. The government can't take us off it, hopefully.
Right.
Unless they come put the guns to our head.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, there's always that threat, but that's a threat to anything. Like, yeah, okay, they could kill you, and then there's doesn't matter what type of currency you're using. But what you hope is that something like Bitcoin gets so kind of mainstreamed that it's too late for them to really like be able to do anything about it.
I think that was yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe you're right.
I think the fact that it is Fidelity selling it, and I think everyone's going to have it in their pensions, and they're going to have it in their portfolios, their allocation. I think that it has become too mainstream for that, and it was going back to the government. It was the legislative branch that made this happen. The SEC was sued by a company called Grayscale. I don't know if you followed any of this.
Very loosely.
Gary Gensler was basically, because he's like Elizabeth Warren lackey. He was totally against giving these Bitcoin ETFs, and Grayscale sued them and sued the SEC, and the SEC lost. So they had to do it. So, in the end, we got there. All right, Dave, listen, I appreciate your time. There's one more thing I do want to talk to you about before we finish. Maybe we'll have another drink. Ricky Gervais's latest special. I know this is a complete segue.
I have not seen it. Was it great?
It's fucking brilliant.
Yeah, he's great.
It's brilliant. It's upset a bunch of people.
I love
We're not so good on free speech in the UK. We have libel laws. I'm actually in a 5-year lawsuit with a guy who claims to be Satoshi. He's suing me at the moment. So, I'm fully aware.
Wait, what?
Because
You think he's the real Satoshi?
that's why I'm being sued, because I maybe challenged his.
Can I say what you said?
Yeah, you can say it.
So he called him a fraud.
Okay.
And so now it's been a 5-year lawsuit that hopefully is going to...
Just for saying a guy's a fraud.
I mean, I said it a few times.
But I don't think you said... Did he say anything worse than that?
Yeah, but just like
Dude, I hope you're just like downplaying some really egregious thing. You're I said he was planning on murdering the Queen.
No,
it was questioning.
Just kidding, British people. I'm allowed to say it over here in America.
So in
That's a
Bitcoin,
joke.
everyone knows this guy is clearly not Satoshi. He's a massive fucking liar. And
Okay.
Pete called him out and has been in a lawsuit for 5 years over calling, basically saying.
So now you got to go to court and argue that this guy's not Satoshi.
no. So it's long and complicated, but
We all know Ron Paul is Satoshi. Anyways, keep going.
Exactly. No, so I God, I'm going to get in trouble for having this, but well, whatever. So interestingly, I lost the lawsuit because I libeled him, because in the UK in libel you have to prove a negative. Like I have to prove that he isn't, rather he prove he is. I lost the lawsuit, but he committed perjury during the trial. He basically submitted false evidence. So the judge said I libeled him, but gave him a £1 settlement, because that's the way you can punish somebody in the courts for committing perjury, because he's like sworn under oath as honest information. And now he's appealed that. He lost that, and now we're just waiting for an appeal at the Supreme Court. But this is 5 years, over £1 million in legal fees. I'm not.
Jeez.
I've had to make a lot of podcasts to pay for this. All from 15 tweets. I'm saying this. So we don't have great free speech laws in the UK. We just don't have it. We don't have a Second Amendment like you guys. And so
Sorry, First Amendment.
Sorry, First Amendment free speech. Second's the gun. Sorry.
Second's what backs it up.
Oh shit! Yeah, seconds. Yeah, so we don't have we have forks and knives, and but yeah, so we don't have the First Amendment. We don't have free speech in the UK. We don't have protection of free speech. So you can say something. You can be sued. You can spend years in court. And we've had it. We've had journalists at like The Guardian who were sued by like Russian oligarchs for investigating them. So at the time when all that's happening, we've got Ricky Gervais coming out and saying things that they are full on. Like they are full on. He's making fun of everything, but he is getting hammered by different areas of the press, but also like influential people. But he's done it at a time that I think it's important to do it. And I think he knows. I think there's an intellectual background to why he's done it, and I feel like that's what Dave Chappelle's done in his latest one. And so like I just wanted to finish like on your take on this, and really just, as a comedian, the importance of comedians in like the last bastions of free speech.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's definitely something to the fact that it is weirdly like kryptonite to authoritarians to be mocked. Mm-hmm. Because there's something where there's a power, like it's a different force. There's a force that is like what we've been doing right now, like kind of having a conversation and trying to make points and like make a good argument. And that's an important thing too. But there's a different force that comedy brings, where if it's like this weird thing in the universe that you almost like, it's kind of like surfing, like you just catch this wave and you can have a room of people almost involuntarily cracking up laughing. Like it's almost, you know, you can stop yourself from laughing at a really funny joke, but if you are just open to it, like if you just sit and are like, let me see if this is funny, and something really hilarious is said, you don't like decide to laugh. It's like it's pulled out of you. You know what I mean? And it's just your natural reaction. And if you can get a large group of people laughing at some tyrant, it's almost like this thing where, oh, everyone knows now that he's full of shit. Just because of this one joke. It's magic, you know?
Xi Jinping is Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah, like that's just funny, man. And then you look at it and you're like, that's just hilarious. And I can't look at you the same way anymore, you know? And for guys like Dave Chappelle and Ricky Gervais, it's like we kind of need them to be the guys because these are the guys where like, hey, look, even if he gets sued, he's got all the money in the world to pay it off or whatever. These guys they don't have to worry about that stuff. So it's great to see that. I just watched Chappelle's latest special the other day, and I think there's something so great to me about the fact that, like, I don't know if you saw any of it.
I saw it.
It's dude, that the trans joke about whatever. Go watch it if people listening want to watch it. It's on Netflix. But I just love that he, like 5 specials ago, got all this heat for making fun of trans people, and then he just went, well, I'm doing that every special now.
Yeah.
I'm doing that in every single special. And it's not a matter of like, oh, you want people to be like laughing at trans people or something. It's like you could laugh at any group of people. It doesn't matter. Yeah. The point is that he's like, no one's going to tell me what I can and can't fucking say. And so if you tell me I can't hit this topic, then I'm going to hit this topic in every special I do for the rest of my life. And I love that. I think there's something beautiful about that, like rebellious like spirit. And that's like right at the heart of freedom. That it's just like, no, I'm sorry. None of you have a right to tell me what I can and can't say. And that's that. And I do think comedians are a necessary part of that. And so I'm interested to go check out Ricky Gervais's thing because I always loved him hosting the Oscars or Golden Globes.
Golden Globes, yeah.
It was just the best, dude. Just the best.
Like he sprayed on everyone.
It's just amazing.
Yeah,
it's
and
amazing.
I saw it the other day. They had another guy, and he just wasn't. I don't even know who he was. He just wasn't very good.
Joe Coy.
Yeah,
and he's a funny comic, by the way. He just didn't completely work in that environment. But also the thing is that Ricky Gervais just like was just, you know, that guy, and he's a very successsul comic, but not like on this level, you know? And so this is like, for him, it was like, oh, this is the biggest show of your life. Whereas Ricky Gervais was already like so huge that he was hosting it for like, what, the 6th time?
5th time, yeah.
And he's like, I don't care. He's like, I'm just like, he might have well just been in his living room, like, fuck you, your thing sucks. You're all a bunch of losers. And it's just it was so great and just so undeniably hilarious. And yeah, that was great. I wish he would do it every year.
Well, look, Dave Smith, we don't do 3 hours like Joe Rogan.
All right.
But this was like, I've waited 3 years for this. I'm so glad we got to do it. We will do it again. I've got things I wanted to ask you about. We never even got to, but we'll save it for another time.
Absolutely, man.
Part of the Problem. Go check it out.
Thank you very much. And I really enjoyed it. So thanks for having me.
Appreciate you, man.